Welcome in to Payoff Pitch, Action Network's Major League Baseball betting podcast presented by BetMGM, and happy opening day. It is Thursday, March 28th. Brendan Glasheen in the host chair, joined today by Anthony DeBundo, and Jim Turvey is here this morning for a special player props episode for opening day. DeBundo was on our Best Bets pod yesterday with Zerillo, our opening day preview show. You can hear Best Bets every Monday, Tuesday, and Friday morning during the regular season. So that will start back up next week on a regular basis. We did opening day a day early. We're doing the prop episode today. We're doing Payoff Pitch on Friday, tomorrow, the 29th. So that rinse, repeat style will begin on Friday, starting tomorrow. So that's when the recurring episodes will happen. Wherever you listen to your podcast, please subscribe. 5-star ratings and reviews are greatly appreciated. Also, if you watch us on the Action Network YouTube channel, subscribe to us there and like the video. Leave your comments. We appreciate the support or lack of support, and you want to just brag on us, that's fine too. We appreciate the feedback. So, all right, fellas, 13 games now. As of 9:27 this morning, Eastern time. We had 2 rainouts already for yesterday. The opener, the first game of the day was supposed to be Mets and Brewers. That got rained out, and Phillies and Braves got rained out as well. So DeBundo had to hang his jersey up, and he has to wait to put it back on tomorrow. So that's a bummer for DeBundo, even though he's okay with it. But that's a different story for a different day. Opening day, player props in general. So let's say someone's tuning into this DeBundo for a first time, and they're trying to figure out how to go about surfing the book for player props in Major League Baseball. What are some thoughts that you keep in mind? And it can be just generally, and it can be for this specific season. What do you got?
Yeah, so I think personally, if you're into projecting things, I think strikeouts are the easiest thing to model out and to kind of forecast, and the most predictive and stickiest from start to start, year to year. We tend to know pretty strongly what a pitcher's strikeout rate is going to be. We can use pitch modeling. You'll hear us talk about Stuff Plus a lot on this podcast. For those who are new to the show, I realized that Zerillo and I kind of threw a lot of names out yesterday that people may not know, or terms. Stuff Plus is a metric that teams are using and that Fangraphs has up now to measure the velocity and the shape of the pitch to determine how good of a pitch it really is. And it's been proven to be more predictive than, say, ERA, xERA, FIP, etc., in producing outcomes. So it's just kind of process level stuff. We talk about xERA, that's expected ERA. So using strikeout rate by, figuring out what is a guy's swinging strike rate, how is his stuff trending, is his velocity up or down, and then you can use the career strikeout rates of the hitters he's going to face. You pretty much know the lineup 1 to 9. You can figure out, okay, if he's going to face 17 hitters, he'll get this guy twice, but he won't face this guy twice, 3 times, etc. Third time through the order penalty. There's all kinds of different things you can kind of put together to project out strikeouts. And I think that's the easiest one to do. And then, when you get into the other side of things, including StatCast park factors, which are important, some ballparks play better to strikeouts than others. We were talking about this with Sean Kerner yesterday. Tampa Bay, Seattle, 2 generally domed environments, have the highest strikeout rates across the league, regardless of team. The park plays up strikeouts, and Teoscar Hernandez, Willy Adames, you can ask them. They'll tell you they've had problems seeing the ball in those lighting issues. On the other side, of course, Coors Field with the altitude affects how the ball moves. It doesn't move as much, so it's easier to hit, and it is less friendly to strikeouts. You'll see strikeout totals there be much lower than you will at other parks, even for the same pitchers. So those are some things to keep in mind. It's kind of a lot of math to figure out like what a guy's strikeout prop should be, but generally you'll hear us reference them on the regular show a decent amount this year, where I know Sean Kerner projects them out, but Zerillo and I will be looking into some props on maybe guys that are trending down, trending up, a certain matchup we don't like for this pitcher because of something that the team does. So those are, of course, probably the most projectable. Then there's, hitting props from bases to runs to RBIs to steals, which we're going to get more into steals later. But I think from a home run perspective, Dinger Tuesday is back this year. So we'll be discussing those on Tuesday. It's a modified format this year. We don't know all the details yet. We won't know until Friday, but I'll have a couple picks every Tuesday just for some
Right.
fun home run, pizza money kind of stuff. And, we look into, barrel rates. How much are you barreling the ball, which is a metric that measures how hard you hit the ball in a certain launch angle and how often. Um, you know, Trying to find guys with raw power that maybe hasn't been tapped into yet by the market. Certain pitchers have stuff that leads to more homers. It's just a true thing. So, trying to target those pitchers to give up more homers is generally good. So there's all kinds of different ways to go about it. Like I said, steals are going to be up this year. I think Zerillo's mentioned it. I've talked about it. Certain teams have stolen more in spring. Certain guys, specifically pitchers, are very prone to giving up steals. And those are the kind of guys you want to target in the steals market. We made a lot of money fading guys like Syndergaard and even Aaron Nola last year in the steals market. And there's a couple guys on opening day even that are pitching that I think are worth looking against in that market.
Yeah, that's a great deep dive of what you do, and you just bringing back memories from last year and previous years. Yes, during the Mondays, Tuesdays, and Fridays shows, Tabundo will give out a lot of strikeout props, more so historically. I think Tabundo. I think that's fair to say, right? And then of course the dingers. You mentioned velocity watch, stolen bases, the pitch clock being 18 seconds now, something to look at once we get through Memorial Day. Jim Turvey, how about yourself? When you go through your player prop process, what are some things that you're keeping in mind?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Anthony and Sean do such a good job, like really digging in deep, 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 deep. That was, a great run through there from Anthony. Part of what I love about early season is you can even zoom out a little bit too and do like kind of high level stuff. Anthony had a great article on the website talking through some of his favorite pitchers and least favorite pitchers this season. Kind of at the beginning of the season, this is the time when you just, if from a high level, if there's a guy you're like, I'm really high on this pitcher or this batter this season, I'm really low on this pitcher or this batter, and they're facing each other. Sometimes I don't even model it out. It'll just be, hey, pitcher X is one that I'm low on. Batter Y is one I'm really high on. I'm going to play batter Y a few ways. I'm going to fade pitcher X a few ways because the markets haven't shaped to the point where, if you've done a lot of, I'm a big futures person. I kind of love that zoomed out big picture approach to the game. This is the time when those markets haven't shaped as much. So
Right.
Ironically, some of the picks I'll be doing today are a little bit more like Anthony said of, really diving in on some of the, this batter hits this pitch well and that kind of stuff. And I do love doing that stuff as well. But if there's people out there who maybe don't have the time to do as much of the really fun nitty gritty stuff, this is the time of season you can bet those kind of zoomed out. I like this player. I don't like that player. They're going against each other. I'm going to go with the person that I think at this point the market isn't caught up on. It's also a time of season when you can kind of fade. I think fading pitcher overs in general is good right now. So leaning towards unders on either strikeouts, outs, even hits and earned run, because I just think this is a time of season when pitchers they're not stretched out yet.
Right.
I'm giving out, strikeouts in general, I think are a good under right now for pitchers. Obviously you want to pick your spots. But even the outs or the earned runs and stuff like that, the colder weather, starters not being stretched out, that's kind of one where you can, pick a few that you think are really good potential plays and lean into that. But yeah, I mean, during the regular season, you're gonna have tons of chances to grind and really dig into the nitty gritty. I really like doing some of the zoomed out. Just I like this player, don't like that player. Let's figure out a way to bet it right now and have a little fun early in the season.
All right.
Yeah, and you'll see that with Dinger Tuesday too. There's certain guys that end up in the column every other week, it seems, because I generally just disagree with the market on their true talent, power, certain pitchers, etc. So, yeah, I mean, it's a lot of that today with me and with my props and guys that I'm fading based off of just, traditional trends and concerning indicators we saw in spring for some. And so workload concerns. So it's really everything. I mean, as much as it is like, how good is this guy? It's how much is this guy going to pitch, and that matters. Is a guy a platoon risk? Like if you had the foresight to know that the opening day that the Jason Hayward was going to get platooned out in the fifth inning, you could have made a lot of money betting his unders because he only got one at bat. So it's really, analyzing that. And that's something we were able to do more even in the playoffs where, everything gets so heightened and usage becomes so much more specific, where we were doing like under hits on like the last guy in the lineup, knowing he's only going to bat twice. And then, certain steals props because we liked how they were getting a read off of this reliever, et cetera. So, that's more for the playoffs. It's hard to do that over 162 games. We'd all probably burn out by May, but definitely there's money to be made and bets to be won, and they're always fun sweats too. The props, I feel, especially if you have like a guy with 6 strikeouts, you got under 6.5. You're just begging the next guy to put the ball in play. You're calling the manager yourself, saying, "Hey man, let's get the bullpen going here." So it's always fun.
But it's kind of I know it was October, but it's kind of a fitting way to get into a new year. It's almost, if you follow the podcast or follow these guys with any regularity, it's a nice transition from October to this early season where guys got to get stretched out and the leashes aren't long, but for different reasons, right?
Yeah, and funny story, it's one of the most fun sweats. We were at Game 6, NLCS before the Phillies collapse, and I had my whole section on Merrill Kelly under 15.5 outs. Bunch of my guys who, we all knew, they knew what I did, and we were all going to join the bet together. We wrote it together. Kelly's mowing down the Phils. Throws 5 innings. The 5th inning, he gets Harper out. We're like, we're dead. It's over. And then all of a sudden, you see Zach Thompson warming up in the bullpen for Arizona, and or it was Zach. Where they had like a sidewinding righty. Forget his name already. And we saw him warming up, and then we saw a video on Twitter
cheering about a guy warming up in the bullpen.
Exactly. And then we saw a video on Twitter of Kelly getting mad at Torey Lovullo because Lovullo had, I think, told him he was done.
Right.
And then here the door opens for the bottom of the 6th, and here comes the reliever, and just the roar from our section, like 8 or 9 guys, just nothing tops that.
All right. That's good. I mean, that's a good example of what you're talking about, though. But that's for October. It's not exactly the same, but I hear you. It makes sense. So yeah, the point being is find these guys in the app. Also, should mention Charlie DiSturco, who will be joining us throughout the year. He has his 777s right up on Mondays and Fridays. Don't quote me on that. That might not be the same scheduling structure, but he'll have 777s this year. So with all that, there's your layout as far as what these guys do as far as their approach. So let's dive into some of your favorites for opening day. DeBundo, I'll let you go first. You're going to a K prop first.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Zach Gallen, under 5.5 strikeouts, plus 145. Gallen is a guy that I am on the fade list for this year, or especially early in the year. He threw 243 innings last year. That was a career high. It was more than anybody in baseball. And you kind of saw with Gallen that he was a little out of steam toward the end. His last 3 starts in the playoffs were not very good in the NLCS or the World Series. He comes back this year, and there still are some concerning indicators in his spring data that make me a little bit skeptical of him early in the season. So the velocity on his breaking balls was down a couple ticks. The fastball was not quite all the way back. He had a couple good outings, but overall his last outing especially was not very good. So I think there's value in going against Gallen early in the season. I know it's the Rockies. I know they're terrible. The current lineup of the Rockies doesn't have as much swing and miss as past ones. And I think there's an interesting angle with Colorado, which is when they struggle to hit at a Coors, a lot of it is because they're used to seeing the balls move at Coors. They hit there half the year, and then they leave Coors, and the movement profiles on the pitches are different. They struggle to hit, especially. You'll even see teams who go to Coors and then come out of Coors struggle in that following series because just how different it is hitting-wise. Well, when you spend an entire month in the Cactus League in Arizona, you don't have, all of that exposure to the Coors altitude at the same level. So it's not as much of a shock factor when your first series of the season is being played in Arizona. So I think that helps the Rockies hitters, and I think that hurts Gallen, who, I don't think projects for as high of a strikeout rate as suggested by this number. So I'm going to take a shot on a plus money prop here, under 5.5 at plus 145. His spring numbers, just to put it in perspective, 13 innings pitched, only 9 strikeouts, 7 walks, 8 earned runs. His opponent quality was higher than the average spring training. They have a metric for that on Baseball Reference that kind of says how good were the hitters you faced. One of the higher numbers, but still only 9 strikeouts in 13 innings. Kind of concerning given what we saw about the velocity profiles as well.
Okay, Jim Turvey, your first one for opening day, player prop.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Seiya Suzuki over 1.5 total bases. You can grab that at plus 140 out there in the market right now. Seiya Suzuki is one of those guys. He's entering his 3rd season, and he's just kind of steadily improved, kind of quietly. The Cubs haven't been as good in recent years, so maybe it's a little bit under the radar. But he had a really strong rookie season, and then last year he put up a 105 weighted runs created plus in the first half, which is solid again, but nothing outstanding. But he really took off in the second half. He put up a 149 WRC plus. That was 13th among all batters in the second half of last season. And this spring, you don't want to weight spring training stats too much, but he has shown absolutely no sign of slowing down. He's got like comical stats right now. MLB The Show stats: 459 batting average and OPS over 1.5. So he's killing it this spring. He also has a good matchup here in that he is one of the best hitters in baseball against split finger fastballs. Eovaldi throws a splitter about fifth most among all pitchers in baseball, among all starters. And Suzuki was the seventh best batter by Fangraphs pitch value hitting pitch value last season. So it's a really good matchup for him. He's also up to second in the lineup for the Cubs. So if we're projecting off of last season, he only had 13 games where he was as high as the number 2 hitter in the lineup. He's going to get that chance this season, in part because he's hitting so well in spring, in part because he improved throughout the season last year. So there's a lot of ways you can approach Suzuki. I think my favorite is the total bases here. But you could look at, hits plus 1 runs plus RBIs. You could just look at, any of those individually. Suzuki as a whole, I'm buying this season, and I really like the opening day matchup for him.
I think he's super underrated generally. Like, people don't really talk about him. 20% projected better than league average this year, going into the season from the bat. 353 on base, 20 plus homers. Like, I know there's probably some fantasy players who listen to this podcast. Like, great pickup in fantasy, and strikeout rates tend to be pretty predictive from the spring. He only struck out 14% of the time in spring, so encouraging.
Okay, it's a Cubs lineup that folks are high on, and I don't think, to Jim's point, while he had a great spring, he's probably still not the guy they're going to pitch around at the top of that lineup, right? He doesn't quite. Maybe at some point, if he keeps putting up, I like that MLB The Show numbers. I like that. Might steal that throughout the course of the year. That's good. If someone's on red hot, or if they're they're not doing well, we'll find another way to. Maybe it could be like one of those bullpen guys that has like a 15 ERA in your MLB The Show fantasy team or something. All right, Tabundo, you actually gave this out yesterday on our opening day preview, and you want to give it out again here.
Yeah, I'll mention it again. Garrett Crochet, under 4.5 strikeouts. I had planned to use Mitch Keller, but our colleague Sean Kerner gave that prop out and moved the market like 62 cents from the number he gave it out at. So no value left in Keller fades, although I am down on Keller. I think it's worth looking into Marlin hitters. Keller's had some problems. I'll talk about him a little bit. His fastball, his cutter, and his sinker all don't really grade out well. He didn't have great command in the spring, which is something he relies on because his stuff is not great. And also Keller's somebody who had higher strikeout rates than his underlying peripherals would suggest. So, his swinging strike rates were like below average, and he was still getting good strikeout numbers. I tend to think that's kind of fluky and not going to last. So I'm concerned about Keller, but again, the value's kind of been bet out of that prop. So we'll go back to Crochet. I mentioned him yesterday. He has not thrown 4 full innings in a competitive logged game since college in 2019. He came up in 2020, drafted. They put him in the bullpen in the playoffs. He was in the bullpen a little bit after that, had battled some major injuries, barely pitched in the last 2 years. Now he's the opening day starter when he was never even really a starter. They got him up to 3.2 innings against the Royals in his last outing. There are still command questions too with Crochet. So, the fastball is great. He throws really hard, but the command is a big question mark. And I just don't really think there's going to be enough usage projecting him for more than 4 innings to me is insane. And so at 4.5 under strikeouts minus 105, I like it. Maybe he gets 4 innings and strikes out 5. That's like 6, maybe. That's like the ceiling though. If he's only going to throw 4 innings, I like my chances. And there's even a downside risk that he goes under this. So you mentioned, bad teams. The White Sox are one. They have no reason to push Crochet. He was a former top prospect, somebody that they don't want to re-injure, somebody they're giving a shot to pitch opening day. But again, I think it's like 3 to 4 innings and then he's out. They're going to go to the bullpen. So I'm going to go with Crochet under 4.5 strikeouts, minus 105 against the Tigers.
All righty. That is an afternoon game, correct? I believe it's one of those afternoon games today, like 4 o'clock.
I don't even know what time any of the games are.
I know it's with those first 2 getting rained out. There was only 1 o'clock game that was scheduled, and then a couple at 3, and then a lot of them at 4. Anyway.
Tigers 4 o'clock.
4 o'clock. Okay.
I'll have a screen on that. I'm excited to watch Tarek Skubal.
Yeah.
Jim Turvey, team we've brought up already, the Arizona Diamondbacks, the reigning NL champs. You are targeting one of their hitters for your next one.
I am indeed. I'm looking at Christian Walker. I'm looking at over 2.5 hits plus runs plus RBI. The Rockies are turning to Kyle Freeland as their opening day starter, who has to be one of the worst opening day starters in recent memory. He was the third worst pitcher in baseball by almost all the metrics. I think xFIP, I think he was actually second worst. This is among starting pitchers with at least 150 innings pitched. So this is one of the worst pitchers. Usually opening day you get aces and unders and fun low scoring games, especially with the weather. This is also the stadium that is playing the least effect by weather. If you look at some of the good tools out there to track weather impacts on games, this is the only one where it's kind of neutral, or if anything might increase scoring a little bit. So this is just a good chance to fade a really bad starting pitcher. Walker had the best weighted runs created plus against Southpaws of any of the Diamondbacks last season. But I also don't think Kyle Freeland's going to be all that good and last all that long in this game. Walker can handle himself against righties too. That's a terrible Colorado Rockies bullpen. This is a terrible Colorado Rockies team in general. I think the Diamondbacks are going to kind of jump all over them. I think Anthony makes a great point about Gallen. He's someone who I'm fading from a kind of zoomed out season perspective as well. It could get a little sloppy down there. We could get kind of a high scoring game with both teams just kind of batting the ball around a little bit in a decent weather setup and early season there. The hits and runs and RBIs allows you to, say Walker only gets one hit. Somehow he hits a couple of ropes, but it's right at guys, but then he hits a sac fly, he drives someone in, he walks, he comes around to score. So if we're fading Freeland as a whole, I do like the hits and runs and RBI as a way to get even more in on a group fade of a pitcher, which is really what I'm targeting with this Christian Walker prop. Walker's a great hitter, but also it's just targeting what I see as the worst pitcher on opening day this season and maybe in a couple seasons past, to be honest.
Kyle Freeland was throwing gas this spring. It was interesting, actually. His velocity was up like 3 miles an hour. I don't know. It's weird. Maybe he's going to find the fountain of youth. Also, Jim, I'm going to push back on that because you know who started opening day for the Washington Nationals last year?
Oh, gosh.
Oh, was it Corbin?
It was. Yeah, Patrick Corbin.
Okay, that is fair.
There's plenty of bad opening day guys. If you get down into the depths of, we've got Alex Wood pitching for Oakland. I
kind of like Alex Wood.
He's okay. I don't know I think I'd take Kyle Freeland over Alex Wood.
You would, huh?
If he didn't have Freeland has the whole Rockies course thing, but
yeah, that is tricky.
Yeah,
but there's no fade Patrick Corbin on opening day. That's
Josiah Gray earned the starting job. He's
I saw that.
Not very good, but I imagine Corbin will get a start in Cincinnati. I haven't looked at the probables, but that's interesting. Although the Reds against lefties right now don't really look like they have much of a lineup. So
right, but the point is he's not. The point is he's not getting. Never mind opening day, he's not getting a first series start. That's how he's down the depth chart now. He's not at the top of that rotation anymore. Which it's kind of sad. Patrick Corbin, always a darling at this time of year. Yes, that game today too. Nationals and Reds is at 4:00. All right, DeBundo, let's go to your next one. A late game tonight, Boston, Seattle. You have a target there.
Yeah, somebody we also talked about on the show yesterday, Luis Castillo under 6.5 strikeouts plus 115 against Boston. So the Red Sox this year, they do have some more swing and miss than they did last year, right? They lose Verdugo. They replace him with Tyler O'Neill. Pretty big spike in strikeout rate between those two hitters. But generally, Rafaela will projected to strike out much less than, say, Wilyer Abreu or even Rob Refsnyder. So those are potential guys that you might have seen in a Red Sox lineup. Still have Yoshida and Devers, who almost never strike out in the middle of that order, hitting 3 and 5 or 2 and 5. So the back half of their lineup, Emmanuel Valdez expected to start. He's a pretty low strikeout rate guy. And then the thing is with Castillo, and we've talked about this yesterday, is that his strikeout rates in the early months are much lower than his strikeout rates in the later months. He was pretty good this spring, so maybe he beats the allegations that he's a slow starter this year, but he generally has been a slow starter, and it's enough for me to play the under 6.5 with bad weather in Seattle. The roof being closed, I'd almost rather it be open. Give us the bad weather because the closed roof seems to have an impact on the strikeouts upward. It's just certainly something worth monitoring, but I think Castillo under 6.5 is worth a play. Scott Service was pretty conservative with his guys the first time through the order last year, the rotation early in the season. Pulled opening day Castillo on 76 pitches last year. So that's interesting to me. And I think worth monitoring because he's not going to necessarily push his guys early in the season. The Mariners, though, the only concern for me with that is that their bullpen is a little bit less deep than it usually is at the early season here.
Right.
So maybe he rides Castillo a little more. Hopefully not. But unless he gets through the lineup and through, O'Neill 3 times, I think he's in pretty good shape to go under 6.5 here.
Okay. And I mean, Zarilla brought this up yesterday. I mean, he makes the case that maybe for this spot, particularly like early in the year, not knowing anything about this current year, you got Logan Gilbert, you've got George Kirby also scheduled to pitch this first weekend. Those are 2 quality arms, right? That they could, in theory, if they trust anyone in their bullpen, use some of their arms today if it doesn't go all that swimmingly in the early going for Castillo. And you've got 2 more than capable guys that could also go deep. I put deep in air quotes, 5-6 innings into a game on Friday and or Saturday and Sunday.
And of course, we like Boston too, so we do think they'll score runs, which cut into Castillo's ability to go deep in the game. So,
yeah, that too. Okay,
too much Boston love for Brendan.
I know. I wasn't expecting that, but I know it's 162. They are going to win some games, Brendan. I'm talking to myself. There.
Probably going to win half of them.
Yeah, well, that means you think they're going over, but okay. That we did the preseason previews on the Red Sox.
I missed the AL East pod, so I got to get my takes off. Corbin Burns overrated.
Yeah, I miss also when the Red Sox spent money. Seeing Jordan Montgomery go for 1 year, $25 million. I mean, come on, like, what are we doing? Like, I know you like their arms at the top of the rotation, but the minute someone goes down, I mean, they had Giolito go down. They've got no depth whatsoever. Anyway, moving on. Jim Turvey, a couple of hitting props early. You've got a first K prop you're on.
Yeah, look at this. Another under on strikeouts. We'll make it, I think that's the third this podcast already, and I'll even shout another 4th already. We're loving the under on the strikeout props. It's not a coincidence. I'm going to Frankie Montas. I'm going under 4.5 strikeouts. That's at plus 120 right now. This was actually at 5.5, and it was juiced, but I also like the under 4.5 at plus money right now. Again, some of the overarching themes we've been talking about throughout this episode, spring being stretched out. This is a pitcher who missed basically all of last season. This is a Reds rotation that is very banged up. They're, top to bottom, even on the hitting side, they're really banged up. I think they're not going to be trying to stretch guys out super long. They're just trying to, survive where they are at right now and get through until a healthier stretch of the season. There's also a fact that, so he's pitching against the Nationals, which on the surface is great. Nationals are one of the worst lineups in baseball. But the one thing they did do well last season is they didn't strike out a lot. They had the second best, as in second lowest strikeout rate against right-handed pitchers last season at 19.2%. Only the Cleveland Guardians were lower. Cleveland Guardians, very much out of orientation with the rest of the league in terms of the contact levels that they have. And the Nationals were, right there with them. I think the Guardians are one that is a little more well-known, but really against right-handed pitchers, the Nationals were neck and neck with them for avoiding swing and miss about as well as anyone in the league. So again, I like all of these. I was going to shout Nathan Eovaldi. I wrote up his under strikeout prop in my single game preview for that. But that has since moved. All of these are moving. So, by the time you hear this, hopefully some of these are still around. But Frankie Montas is one of the several pitchers I am looking to go under on his strikeouts on opening day.
All right. And we got a couple more before we wrap it up. Tabundo, you've got second to last one. What do you have?
Yeah, so I'm waiting on Friday openers because the scheduling kind of cooked me with the way that the Phillies got postponed because I had done some work on that. I'm writing a preview for Phillies Braves that will be published today now that the game is pushed to Friday. So these are more day 2 props, but waiting for reopeners. But I think Bohm's going to open like plus 140 to not get a hit, plus 135 to not get a hit against Spencer Strider. He has had major problems with high velocity. Strider looked like the Terminator in spring. Strider has seen the Phillies a lot in the last 2 months that he's pitched, and Bohm has never really had an answer for that matchup, and I think it's a poor one for him. So looking to go against Bohm and also looking to go against Rojas. I think he is a little overmatched at the plate. high velocity, I think, is going to be a problem for him. So, with Strider being so elite, pitch to pitch and batter to batter, having some maybe home run problems, Bohm and Rojas are not guys that are going to take advantage of that. So I think it's a great matchup for Strider against them. And then the Braves have really beefed up their bullpen with high velocity as well. That was the biggest change between last year and this year for Atlanta. Their bullpen has more flamethrowers this year. I think that's going to make them really a better pitching unit, even if the offense takes a step back. So looking to play against a couple Phillies hitters, specifically Bohm and Rojas in that matchup. And then stolen bases are interesting. The Angels stole more than any team year over year in spring training compared to last year. New manager, so that's interesting. Worth targeting potentially like a Zach Neto to steal a base. They have some guys. It's also a good matchup. Corbin Burns traditionally has not been great at holding runners. He often doesn't even care because he knows he's so good that he can overcome that. Burns' strikeout rate is also way down. So maybe there is a path to the Angels getting some guys on and getting some steals. Hopefully for Jim's final prop, they don't ultimately come around to score. But I think there's a look on the Angels, and then there's a couple other guys that I want to dive more into, and I might throw just like small pocket change on steal props because I do think that generally steals are going to be up this year. Maybe a Jake Fraley, who stole a lot in the spring, gets a matchup with Josiah Gray, who was not great at holding runners. Tyler Glasnow, notoriously bad at holding runners. Do you trust, the Cardinals, maybe Mason Wynn to steal a base? If you look, they have some guys who can steal, and Glasnow has not been good at holding runners. So St. Louis, Los Angeles, the Reds against Gray, although Ellie De La Cruz is plus 150 to steal a base. I would not play that. That's a little bit cheap. But yeah, certainly some guys worth targeting in the steals market this season as we enter the new year. I just don't know if I want to have like 36 bets on opening day. I kind of need to say pencils down, let's start the games, throw my phone into the river so that I don't put any more stolen base props or craziness into my portfolio for the day.
Pencils down. I like that's good. It's like you're taking the standardized test. All right.
Exactly. And, I just keep the more I look into things, the more I'm like, oh, well, Neto could steal, the Angels could steal a base. They're plus 139, I think, to steal a base now. That number got bet down overnight from plus 180. So, the market's kind of catching on. Somebody hit it hard last night. I have an idea of who might have done that. And I think that it's interesting to kind of monitor these trends as we get into the season now.
Hundreds and hundreds of bets you can make on a baseball slate, and Bundo is doing. It's like the SATs. You get more credit. You don't lose credit for if you get wrong answers. You lose credit, but you also don't lose or gain anything if you just don't answer or don't bet stuff. So you're just
there's two ways of looking at that, because some would say that sometimes the best bet you can have is the one you don't make, right?
Right. Yeah.
But you got to be in it to win it, which is the classic, fallacy that people have. And, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So, you have to kind of balance the proverbs on opening day.
That's a good lesson for the whole season, really.
Yes.
But I like the pencils down. Jim Turvey, another hitting prop for us for opening day.
Yeah, first of all, pencils down, amazing. I'm going to use it to tell myself when it comes to futures that pencils down is fine.
Yeah.
I was logging some real sicko stuff the other day, and I got a text from Anthony that was just basically a verbal, what are you doing?
We basically said pencils down, right?
And then
said pencils down.
I tailed one of the bets, so.
That's the thing. There's some good stuff still there, but the futures markets, there's just so many that you really do have to do pencils down at some point. But I'm going to end with a couple of Orioles props here. I'm saving them for last, even though the hitter one was my favorite, but they have disappeared from the market. I'm not entirely sure what's going on there. So in this Orioles-Angels game, I really loved Ryan Mountcastle over 1.5 hits plus runs plus RBIs. That was at plus 105 when it was last up. So they, I talked about with Christian Walker, a good hitter against a bad pitcher in a platoon advantage. Similar story here with Mountcastle. He's getting to face the Angels and Patrick Sandoval, he's not in. Anthony's a little higher on Freeland than me. Freeland to me is notably worse than Sandoval, but Sandoval is not a great pitcher by any stretch of imagination. Not one of the aces of opening day. And Mountcastle was one of the best hitters in baseball against Southpaws last year. He was 8th by weighted runs created plus. And for his career, he's got a pretty notable split with a 130, weighted runs created plus against lefties compared to just 105 against righties. So since his debut, that's 21st in baseball, and surrounded by a bunch of top tier names that you don't think of when you think of Ryan Mountcastle, but against lefties he really is that good. So keep an eye, see if that pops back up. Sandoval also isn't great against righties. He's got pretty notable splits that way as well. So I really love that prop. I'm not sure what's going on with the Orioles, if there's something about their lineup that the books are onto that they want to wait to post those. But if you can get over 1.5 hits plus runs plus RBIs for Mountcastle, I love that. I also love looking at his total bases, because it's one of these games that looks like, my thought on why they pulled it is that potentially it could be a game that is a little bit weather dependent. The weather's not going to be great in Baltimore. So the other half of this coin is I'm looking at Corbin Burns potentially under on earned runs. This also isn't up there right now. I'd imagine it will be 2.5 juiced, or 1.5, round even, or maybe a little bit plus money. I love fading the Angels this season. This was a lineup that was actually about average against righties last season, but there's a big difference in the lineup this season. It is missing one Shohei Ohtani. So he was 196 weighted runs created plus against lefties, easily their best batter. Then it was Trout, obviously, who is still there and you still have to worry about. He's
in the lineup.
Concern. Exactly. And he supposedly will be for opening day. But then after that, it's Mickey Moniak, who had, a BABIP that really floated his success against righties. And then a lot of just kind of average pedestrian hitters. I think some people are a little bit higher on the Angels than I am. I don't see this lineup as one that's going to worry someone like Corbin Burns, especially in, a situation where the weather's not great. The Orioles bullpen is very good. I doubt we're going to see long stretches. Of course, I doubt he goes 7-8 innings today, especially in colder weather. So if you can look at a way to potentially be on Burns' run prevention in an earned runs market, I'm not sure if we will see that. I'm a little curious why the props aren't out there, but Mountcastle and Burns are two Orioles I'm looking at on opening day.
You're not worried about job-focused 7-year, $245 million man Anthony Rendon?
He's just there it's just cashing that check, baby.
Okay. All right, so you gave up the second one there, too. The second one from that game, that's the first game of the day now with the two rainouts, the Corbin Burns play. Angels at Orioles. Corbin Burns, you got to get used to that one. Corbin Burns is the horse now for the Baltimore Orioles. And then Debundo, you've got just something you want to mention, you want to look out, and maybe we can hit on this tomorrow when we do the traditional slate preview for Payoff Pitch on a Friday tomorrow. Some things you're looking out for based on what happens today?
Yeah, I mean, just always look into bullpen usage. I think that's generally important as to like how much leash a starter is going to have. And look into kind of what did the guy do in his last spring start? Like, there's some guys who didn't quite get fully stretched out. And so you can try to find, notes on pitch counts. It's hard for spring. There's a lot of games that didn't have StatCast or didn't have full box scores, even with like pitch counts. I was trying to find the Crochet pitch count for his last start. It was impossible. So you kind of had to estimate. I messaged some people who were White Sox fans to get the real answer on that, or at least an estimated answer on that. So it's hard to kind of get all the information from spring training, but certainly watching those and using those to try to project out starters. I talked about Rojas and Boehm as guys on fading in the Friday game at 3. We don't have lines up for the rest of the markets or props, so it's obviously dependent on that. But as always, follow Jim, follow me in the Action app. We'll probably have some props Friday as well. Getting ready for the second full slate of the year as we do this over and over again for the next 5 to 6 months.
All right.
One last thing real quick. I love that Debundo and Zerillo talked about this yesterday, kind of the difference in an A bullpen and a B bullpen for teams. And that's something else. If a team is in a tight game, opening day here, and they use some of their big guns, but this is a bullpen that has only 2 to 3 good arms, that's a huge impact for day 2. They're probably not going to start the season, run out guys 2 straight days, some of those top arms. So that's suddenly something that, for a full game play should definitely be paid attention to. There's definitely teams that have 1 or 2 great arms. There's so many good relievers at this point. Every team's got 1 or 2. Most teams do at least. So, but the depth is really the difference maker on some. So look for teams that there's a big gap between their A bullpen and B, and see which teams use the A bullpen on opening day versus who still have those bullets on game 2 or the weekend as a whole.
Only 10 games tomorrow, so there are several teams that are off tomorrow. But with these rainouts, that doesn't really it also allows for a buffer, obviously, in the scheduling. based on some rain. And we have to keep an eye on the rain for today. So keep an eye out for that. As Tabundo mentioned, you can find himself and Jim Turvey in the app, Zerillo, Sean Kerner, Charlie DiSturco, BJ Cunningham, Tanner McGrath, go right down the list. All of our baseball contributors that will be joining us throughout the course of the season on Payoff Pitch. We are back tomorrow with a traditional Best Bets pod tomorrow morning. Who is on that tomorrow? Are you there tomorrow, Jabundo? Are you there?
No, Charlie and BJ.
Charlie and BJ, two new voices.
Their season debut, yeah.
Okay, very good.
So I'm not going to call it the B, no, the B bullpen. No, I'm kidding. They're the A team as well. We're all A teams here at Action.
Great. That was, I thought it was funny. Don't forget to
I don't want to be too mean. We got to wait until like at least May until I
Yeah.
start throwing haymakers at people. So
Yeah.
it's all love.
We got to get stretched out. We got to get stretched out. We got to build calluses, and then we can.
Yeah, I need the day off.
Okay. Yeah, plus the tournament, all of it. Busy time of year, very busy time of year. Thanks to Jim Turvey, Anthony Tabundo, Brendan Glasheen. Again, you can find us in the Action app. You can find those guys in the Action app. Please leave a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to your podcast. Check out the Action Network Discord throughout the course of the season as well. You can chop it up with experts and your fellow betting communities. We're signing off. We're back here tomorrow morning. Thanks for listening to Payoff Pitch, Action Network's MLB betting podcast presented by BetMGM. Good luck with all of your bets on opening day. Enjoy it, and we will see you again tomorrow morning.